Epistemology is the study of knowledge. The main questions are, what is knowledge, and how does one acquire knowledge? The first has a problem. The words we use have meanings that we implicitly understand ourselves, we understand our own speech, and we tend to assume that other people often understand us. And when breakdown occurs in that communication, then you have issues. If you're at all interested in this conversation, hello, my name is Aurelius Argenti. I run this channel, Foundational Philosophy, and as you can see in the bottom left, I have a little guy to make these more interactive. I've been studying these problems of foundational philosophy for the past few years. Yeah, now surpassed 5 years. I'm a student of philosophy. I take after many different traditions, and I've got a confident enough view of how to navigate these waters, this forest of all knowledge, that I want to start publishing this work. Regarding epistemology specifically, we'll deal with this semantic problem first. The classical view of knowledge is justified true belief. I think you have an idea of what each of those means, but each term that you use carries with it the very next question of, well, what does that mean? There are various different ideas for what is true. There is the pragmatist view of truth, which is, well, what's true is what works. So you have an idea, if it's able to predict things well, then it works. This is, in some senses, practical, as pragmatism would lead you to correlate. However, it's insufficient in many ways in grounding some of these ideas, because what works isn't value independent, you could say. You have these ideas of what you should want, and then you're employing a means of how to get what you should want. And that's already assuming so much, because, in a sense, you're making an objective truth claim on the nature or being of truth, an ontological claim, and you're rooting it in your own preferences, that your own preferences come before truth. But is it true that those are your preferences? Well, does it work? Do your preferences work towards the ends of your preferences? You're already presupposing the idea of your own preference, your own values. It's as the objectivists, the students of Ayn Rand, like to point out, it's primacy of consciousness. You are saying that your own consciousness is the root of all reality. You're presupposing it to be the case without justification. And all presuppositions have that problem of justification. So we've gone on a rabbit hole, and let's get back to the major idea. And I should probably start using the tablet too. So there's the pragmatists, and they get it wrong. So then what are some of these other views of truth? We'll go with the subjectivists. Truth, it's rather close, and pragmatists could potentially be seen as subjectivists, but this is the idea commonly found informally of there's your truth, there's my truth, everybody has their own truth, and if you take it one step further, your assertion of your truth over anybody else's truth is just your will to power over that person, and you're trying to oppress them. This is a very pernicious idea in the modern world. It suggests multiple truths, which is essentially the affirmation of contradiction, that two mutually exclusive things can be true simultaneously. And it is often taken on to avoid a tough conversation of hurting somebody's feelings. However, due to the acceptance of contradiction, that isn't supposed to be a cross of St. Peter, that's just supposed to be contradiction symbol. Due to the acceptance of contradiction, we'll put a pin in this for now, and that's because if you start with the idea that contradictions are true, then you can conclude anything, quite literally. You can conclude that contradictions are also not true. So whether it is the case that contradictions are true or not, contradictions aren't true. And so because subjectivism supposes a contradiction, we're going to cross it out for now. This, by the way, this first iteration of going through these ideas is not going to be rigorous. Feel free, certainly, to point out errors as you see them. Know that I will appreciate your comments very greatly. I want to go in the direction of making this rigorous, so I thank you for any contributions that you make. I have been on a journey to only learn so much about certain philosophers' work insofar as it relates to the journey that I'm on. Even in diving into these semantics, the meaning of the words that we use, is a whole philosophy of language at play here. And I'd say the largest influence in my position currently is a guy named Wittgenstein. Let's see if I'm going to be able to spell his name properly. And in his later work, he came to the conclusion that the meanings of words are intersubjective. Well, what does that mean? Inter means between, and subjective means of the subject. So there are various subjects, various people who play what he called language games, where they're trying to take this idea, this concept, and this or potentially relation of concepts in their own head and package it in a way that another person can conjure, basically, or imagine the same concept or relation of concepts or ideas in their own head too. And the means that people often use are words. These come in certain languages, such as the English language, Japanese, Korean, but the particular semantic meaning is kind of like a handshake between the people actually communicating. Two salesmen are going to talk about work in a different context than how two physicists are going to talk about it. Work in physics terms is force over distance. Work in sales terms is that occupation that you have to spend 8 hours of your day at. So now let's meander back to an idea of truth. The general idea of truth that we're going to be going after is the correspondence theory. The correspondence theory of truth, it suggests that there is an objective reality in which subjects are all embedded in, and a proposition, a statement, a sentence corresponds or maps to a fact of reality, a structure of reality, or not. And if it does, then it is true. But if it doesn't, then it's false to that reality. Now, this is model specific. So say you had a hypothetical world like of Tolkien. Hobbits are real is a statement that is true relative to the world of Middle-earth. Hobbits are real is not true if it has equivalent semantic meaning, is not true in the world that we inhabit in terms of the quote-unquote real world. So this is the sense that we're talking about when we're talking about correspondence theory of truth. And this is the idea of truth that will be going forward. However, this does require that we gain knowledge of reality itself. The concept of reality, what we're trying to point to with that concept, has to correspond to something, and we have to gain knowledge over it. We can't just suppose it. Presuppositions are unjustified. And the idea of foundational philosophy that we're promoting here, or that I'm promoting here, is trying to justify all of this. There's a lot of great ideas that we as humans would greatly benefit from cashing out. Ideas like objective morality. Imagine getting to know what you should be doing every day or every part of your day, down to the complexity that you would like. Imagine, too, objective morality as applied to the justification of the use of force. If it is true that there is an objective delineation between what is criminal and non-criminal, between what constitutes a crime that justifies violence to be used in opposition and behavior that is defensible, that is morally permissible, it may occur, even if one doesn't like it, but it's behavior that that person is justified to use force to defend, then political squabbling for those who care about truth, for those who value truth. So not everybody, but those who value truth and would put truth and valuing truth before their own whims, before their own carnal desires, before their own will to just power. Those who would subject themselves to moral laws, political issues would largely be solved. Now there's squabbling about details, but that would undermine the necessity for any government to arbitrarily legislate, come up with these laws, determine, oh, you're not allowed to sell raw milk, you're not allowed to pay someone a wage rate that we don't desire, you're not allowed to enter this industry without us giving you the go-ahead and licensing you, you're not allowed to practice your business in this certain way. You're not allowed to own this piece of property. You're not allowed to associate with this person how I don't like. You're not allowed to go after these powerful elites who extract your wealth, who do disgusting things to children on islands. All of these things can be cashed out, potentially, if it all holds true, if it all corresponds to reality. If you're at all interested in joining me on this exploration of foundational philosophy, I invite you to subscribe, for one. I also have an email list linked down below, and if you are interested in shaping the future of this exploration, certainly, then I invite you to join the Skool community. The invite link is down below. That is where I will be conversing with people to build towards these ideas in order to cash them out. The value is always to build towards this understanding of truth. But thank you, and we'll get back into it. Let's see. There we go. We'll move on. So this is our idea of truth. And now, what do we mean by believe? Before we even get to justification, what do we mean by belief? This kind of gets into the nature of what we are as conscious observers. But I would suggest a belief is a structure or relation of structures that we model as reality. So there's, you could say, the eye looking at the outside world. I'm gonna go for a bit of a tree. There's the eye looking out at the outside world, and you think you see a tree out there. And so you form a belief of the outside world that there is a tree out there. That is an attempt to model the facts of reality. You're trying to make, say, ontological claims. Ontology being the study of being, the study of existence. You're trying to say that reality is this way, building off the correspondence idea of truth. You're trying to say a certain model is this way. So if you, again, if we're going back to the Hobbits, Tolkien, Middle-earth, you have a belief about Middle-earth, a belief about an ontological claim, a claim of being, a fact of reality relative to the world of Middle-earth. Not necessarily this reality, but a reality, a world. So with that idea of belief, then I hope I've painted a good enough picture for you to understand my semantic meaning. We'll move on to justified. Before I continue on that last point, these are all provisional ideas, provisional semantic meanings, so hopefully you get the broad strokes, the rough edges of what I'm saying. Because a key part of epistemology is justifying the semantic meaning of any word. So, meandering back around. Oh, justification. What does it mean for something to be justified? Do you have a good reason for it? For you to have a valid reason for it? Does your justification mean that it must be necessarily true? Or can it just be probably true? And it's still knowledge. This is a question that gets to the heart of epistemology. and it is a question brought about mostly, this is a question brought about by a man named Edmund Gettier. In 1963, he published a paper called Is Justified True Belief Knowledge? And in it, he advertised this Gettier problem. There are many different versions of it, but the idea would be something like this. You're walking into your job, and you have a silver round in your pocket. Single 1 ounce silver round. You go into the interview, and you feel pretty confident about it. The interviewer does as well. They tell you, I'm pretty certain that you're going to get the job. In fact, I would call it a safe bet for many. That would count as justification for the knowledge that you would get the job. And so you infer, thinking to yourself, flipping the silver coin in your fingers, the man who gets the job has a silver round in his pocket. You wait in the lobby, and after the next interview, they come out saying they found their hire, and the man sitting next to you is the one that gets the job. He's overjoyed, and he pulls out of his pocket a silver round, flips it, catches it in the air, is a little flourish, just to have bad manners on everybody else, including you. Your statement was right. The man who got the job did have a silver round in his pocket. So was that knowledge? It certainly didn't carry the semantic meaning that you thought it did. You were thinking that that man was you, but it wasn't. And yet, the man who got it still had the silver round. That doesn't feel like knowledge. Perhaps there's a general disconnect between the statement you thought you were making and the statement that you actually made. But is that knowledge? I would suggest not. I go with a harder criteria for knowledge. I don't just go with justified, I go with valid. And valid would mean the conclusion necessarily being true given true premises. It's about the structure of the belief. It's about the structure of, really, the proof of the belief. And if the premises of the proof are true, then the conclusion of the belief is necessarily true. So what can you then have knowledge about? Well, really, in the normal view, close to nothing. And so a lot of people dismiss this option. They dismiss the idea of knowledge in a real sense. If we're combining valid and true, something that is both valid and true is sound. Knowledge is sound belief. But a lot of people reject that. Even though sound belief is necessarily true, a lot of people go with the idea that you can have knowledge that is possibly false, but then it contradicts itself. If you can have knowledge that's false, how can you claim that it's true? Oh, reasonable confidence. Oh, reasonable confidence, huh? It's still a contradiction. You're abdicating your responsibility for justification. If you can prove it, then it's knowledge. Everything else is a belief. And for a lot of people, that may make them uneasy. For a lot of people, they have more certainty than is justified. But now, the second question is a bit more clear. How do we acquire sound belief? And I'll leave us off with the starting point. So what's the starting point? The objectivists likes to suggest that there existence. Existence exists. And now I will ruffle some feathers. This does nothing. This does absolutely nothing. What is existence? Is existence objective reality? If it is, you're just presupposing it. Your presupposition is unjustified. Oh, stolen concept fallacy, stolen. I'm not rejecting that it does. I'm not rejecting that objective reality exists. I'm just saying you're presupposing it. You're not justifying it. That's not a proof. You're believing it dogmatically. A dogma can be true, but it's still a dogma. So then what's the starting point? And I want to make this clear that the epistemic starting point is different than the ontological starting point. What justifies knowledge to us as conscious observers, call it, as people, as subjects of, what justifies that at the foundation is going to relate to us. That does not mean that the same thing is the root of all reality. That would be an error. So, to continue ruffling feathers, what is that epistemic foundation? It's that conscious experience. But experience of what? You don't know. You cannot say like you're watching this on a tablet or a phone or a computer. If you start at the epistemic base, you could be deluded. You could be disconnected from reality. This is the idea of Descartes' demon. Imagine you had a demon upon your shoulder feeding you sense perception of a world that was not so. This is the idea of a brain in a vat, getting electrical impulses to make you believe that you're not experiencing reality. This is also the idea of like perceptual illusions. So there's auditory illusions, there's tactile illusions, there's visual illusions. But even given all of that, even given Descartes' demon, even given the brain in the vat, even given the Matrix, even given any of these sorts of stories about what we perceive not being objective reality, there is still experiencing. There is still an experiencing of the illusion or delusion. And it is through the studying of that experience that you can begin to gain knowledge. The idea of this is the bracket, or bracketing. It comes from phenomenology, which is the study of phenomena, the study of these sorts of experiential appearances. Take everything that you believe about the natural world and bracket it. We'll come back to it later. We'll justify it first. We'll justify it from experience. Realize that my little avatar is in the way. And I suggest that through this method of phenomenology, the study of these appearances to experience, that we can have sound belief about objective reality, about existence. You just have to do the work. You gotta be careful not to steal a concept, not to fail to bracket knowledge about existence. And if you're interested in this journey and if you made it this far, I commend you greatly. And I do invite you to subscribe, leave a like, share, join the Skool community, and to get into contact with me personally. And as an added little treat for the ontological foundation, I'll give you a hint with the transcendental potentially being at the bottom of existence. Sorry for the quick cut, but I just had to move us down a page. Identity A equals A is at the root of ontology, the study of being, that a thing is itself. Suppose there were, for the sake of argument, indivisible parts that made up reality, whether they be fields, or parts of fields, or the excitations of fields, or strings, or anything else. Just call them nodes. They're kind of points more than anything. Compositions of the points would make up space and the matter of space, connecting to each other like so, or maybe even like so to all three, or to all four. You may not get the picture, but it makes a big web out in space for everything to go to. But the smallest part is the node. And the node is the node. One could say the node is that which is the node, that which is itself. It is, I would say, still an open question if there is an ontological justification of the identity of such a node, or if it just is. If the node is a kind of brute fact. And if it is a brute fact, then there would be nothing transcendental at the bottom of ontology. But if it isn't brute fact, then we don't know. There may be something transcendental at the bottom of being, at the bottom of existence, at the bottom of reality. The idea is that this is some kind of mind of God. Or it could be something much more absurd, like little magic gnomes. We can't know. Because we are composed of such nodes, we are embedded in this space. We can only describe what these nodes and how these nodes relate to each other structurally. We cannot know or understand the underlying nature of them. They could be the magic gnomes, as we said, doing little magic gnome things, or they could be God imagining reality. But the idea of the brute fact, to a degree, is the materialist idea. And then the suggestions of the transcendental, would be the idealist position. And as we continue on in phenomenology and understanding what consciousness is, this question between the two won't have a solution. We will assume neither for the sake of this inquiry for now, until such a time as we can figure it out. Instead, we will only describe the structural interrelations between the nodes, how they conjoin, how they compose, how they succeed each other, how they change, all of those things. If you want to get ahead, the idea that we'll be going with is Wolfram physics. Good luck. And if you made it this far again, I commend you for getting to the end of the addendum. So please share this with anybody who might be interested. Please leave a comment down below for anywhere that you would like me to be more rigorous. I will try my best to get to all the comments. Please subscribe, sign up to the Skool community, and thank you for watching. It's been a pleasure.